gentlemen and ladies. I have the great pleasure to meet you and talk to you on the tape recorder today on a very important subject of self-knowledge and God knowledge. Since the beginning of creation, when the first flicker of self-awakening dawned on man, his attention has been more and more concerned with the problem of his own worldly existence, an investigation into the cause and source of all creation. For ages, he has probed and queried in vain, but now at last, his increasing thirst for knowledge is turning him to study the results gained by others in the field. Ancient and modern sages echo, what is that? The knowledge of which makes everything else known. And in the same breath reply, knowledge of the higher self, the true man. So the supreme knowledge is that which deals both in theory and practice with man's true nature and his relation to God. It is in fact a natural science without hypothesis, no subject to change or time criticism. In ancient India it was named Paravidya, science of realized truth or science of the beyond, and different denominations sprang up to interpret this knowledge. The term Aparavidya, standing for preparation for achieving the knowledge of Paravidya, was then introduced. This preparation consists of following an ethical life and the practice of concentration in so many ways, both indispensable for spiritual development. Man is constantly changing or introducing new names and terminologies to describe this science. The masters were called saints, and the nature of knowledge, mat, giving us the term Sant Mat, which is at present largely used to describe the science. Other terms, Shabda Yoga, Sur Shabd Yoga, Sahi Yoga, etc., are synonyms. The word saint in Sanskrit, meaning master of the highest order, and mat is confirmed opinion or statement made by an expert out of personal experience. The foundation of this science, therefore, is a result obtained through a critical study, minute investigation, and the lifelong personal verification of facts based on practical experience of self. This experience of self is something that a competent master is prepared to give to each individual who approaches it. Sant Mat is therefore the teachings, system, path of the saints. Masters do not attach any importance to names, designations, or the fact that many religious sects, groups and circles have claimed this science and named it after their leaders or founders. They look upon these groups as schools where man, the noblest being of creation, can study as children of one and the same Almighty Father. A master, also called Sant Satguru, has complete mastery of both theory and practice and is competent to impart knowledge and experience to all sincere seekers after truth without any distinction whatsoever of color, caste, or creed. Any one man or woman, rich or poor, young or old, sage or sinner, educated or uneducated, who is able to understand the Master and his science has a right to acquire this knowledge. The dictionary defines mat as wisdom, but the colloquial meaning is a sect or faith, a group of people holding certain opinions or beliefs in common. Such beliefs and opinions, however, based on stray knowledge and teachings, are not sufficient to carry the support of personal experience, and therefore the discerning man is not led astray by mere empty words. Many societies, faiths, and other religious circles have only a legacy of books, beliefs, and theories to offer those who thirst after spirituality. They conceal their weaknesses and deficiencies behind a screen of warm welcome, an outpouring of technique and terminology, and the showering of spiced words, phrases, sayings, and quotations crammed in the enormous mass of literature we have on the market today. Propaganda and posing has taken the place of practicability, so that the deluded public is being repelled from sacred books and the thought of God. Atheism is therefore on the increase. Believing in a thing or fact without troubling to investigate does not in any way credit an intelligent man. On the contrary, it reflects on his ignorance and credulity. Any belief not based on personal experience and verification of facts has absolutely no value. Thus, a modern man wants a well-defined, clear-cut science verifiable by his own experience and giving concrete results. We should therefore try to see and hear with our own eyes and ears, rather than indirectly with the eyes and ears of others. Man is composed of body, mind, intellect, and soul. We are extremely careful to develop ourselves physically and mentally, but understand very little about the soul, which is the power ruling both the body and the mind. Physical desires are not lasting. There are limitations of body and mind that we cannot shut our eyes to. So we must search for the perennial sources of joy and peace within ourselves. Self-analysis is the first step in this direction. Many doubts cloud our minds at this stage. There is an omnipotent power called God, believed in, worshipped, and talked about by most people. Can we know more about Him? Can we see Him and talk to Him? There is a definite and clear reply to each one of these questions. But the most convincing one comes from a master who in a few brief words exclaims, "Yes, we can see and speak to Him." That is, if we become as exalted as He is said to be, masters say yes, and we do not have to wait till death comes, but we can experience it right now. This is in consonance with laws of nature, of which we have as yet no knowledge. Around us we see, we feel that everything, from the tiny atom to the mighty universe, is governed by the law of nature. So to the profound thinker, there is nothing chaotic, haphazard, are uncertain about this universe and the laws which govern it. To gain any objective, there is a law of nature, a principle and method involved for checking, testing and weighing the result of our endeavors. So it is too in this science of nature, and similar methods can be traced by any careful student in all religious scriptures, expressed in different words in various languages. We wished to enter the kingdom of God, but how? With the help and guidance of one who has himself entered and can guide us there, is the simple reply from the masters. Is it possible? It is a knowledge which is exact and as sure as 2 and 2 make 4, is their reply again. It is not enough to be content with the holy books and the singing of praises and the hymns. We must strive for the same degree of advancement as the authors of the talks and knowledge recorded in these books have achieved. Their experience must become our experience. For what a man has done, a man can do, of course, with proper guidance and help. We should stop at nothing short of this. We have hardly a dim spark of love for him. Will it help to cherish a hope? This is another question asked, and saints reply, it is sufficient to make you eligible for the highest science of approach to him. It is a pleasing ray of hope. Oh, if this small spark would be kindled into a flame. Again we ask, Jesus, another great master, spoke so lovingly of him, but we are sinners and there may not be much hope for us in this age. The master's soothing reply is, no matter, if you are the worst of sinners, stop where you are. There is hope for everybody, even in this crucial age. Ages ago, nature provided us materially and spiritually. Today the same unchangeable laws operating and will continue to do so in the future. There is food for the hungry and water for the thirsty. Nature's demand and supply works. It is only through a living master that one can contact the Almighty God within. In Sant Mat, contemplation of objects or images is not advised, which is indeed harmful to progress. Photographs of the masters are for remembrance and recognition only, and on no account should we become attached to such external practices. A man, according to the science of Paravidya, is not entitled to be called man in the true sense of the word, unless he has full knowledge, both theoretical and practical, of his distinguished position in creation, in several component parts, body, mind and soul, in this order of comparative importance, and his relationship with the unseen power, while yet living on this earth. He who does not understand this much has not been introduced to the first lesson and is yet to begin the alphabet of man. The saints therefore impress the need of man-making. When scientifically observed facts drawn from practice and experiment are explained verbally to a gathering by a master saint, it is called satsang external. This satsang constitutes the theoretical side of their teachings, whereas the actual performance to develop and achieve inner advancement is the practical part called meditation and satsang internal. Conscientious practice brings fruit within days or weeks, and it is not necessary to wait years for results. A true master gives first-hand experience on the very first sitting. We are not all of the same mental standard, and thus the time will differ. When the practical side is neglected due to lack of firmness or determination, carelessness or pressure of circumstances, scholars of the many religious schools dwell more and more upon theory alone. The decline of the science then commences and man finds no solace. This is usually the case when a master leaves the body. Adequate provision, however, is made for the revival of this science in every age, when both the positive and negative powers commence their rounds again, the former through the agency of master souls, while the latter work through persons, so-called masters, who lack practical experience or are deluded in theoretical disputations. These master souls, though quite ordinary in appearance, are a great deal more, just as it is difficult for us to judge a scientist, a doctor, or an engineer until they speak out or display their skill, so too we cannot recognize their aptitude and authority till we have experienced the divine power working through them. In this science there is no secrecy or mystery. The objective is constructive and beneficial to man. So saints have torn aside the curtain of secrecy to make it available to each and everyone who calls. There is an unseen power working through the saints. Why this power prefers to remain concealed from the human eye is a question to be asked directly by contacting the human pole, the master saint, through whom the power is working. This is the only medium of approach to him. If we wish to use electric energy, we must go to a switch or pole which will put us in contact with the powerhouse. This unseen power can be called a sea of love. When we wish to bathe, we go to the edge where the shallow waters begin and say, we have bathed in the sea. Thus to experience that power and to derive real benefit from the knowledge of God, we have to go to the only source of contact, the master saints. The nature has designed man to leave his physical body at will, transcend to higher spiritual planes, and then return to the body. They help each aspirant personally, and each receives a practical experience, how little it may be, during the very first sitting at the time of initiation. A person who is competent to give man this personal experience of withdrawal or separation temporary from the body, and who can thus put him on the way to higher spiritual realms, is a genuine master, saint, or sadguru. The heads of different religious organizations were intended to do just this, but we may judge for ourselves their efficiency today. The first-hand experience we receive through the kindness and grace of a real saint is in itself the solution of the problem of death. According to the Bible, unless you are born anew, you cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven. So to be born again is to leave one's body and enter into the beyond, a transition from the physical to the astral. Someday we have to leave this temporary structure, which like a building of bricks and mortar deteriorates with time. There is no appeal in the laws of nature against the death sentence. We fear death because of the agony, suffering and uncertainty about the unknown beyond. We fear illness because it brings us near death's door. And so we struggle to live, though we know our end is certain. No soothing words from the doctors, friends, relatives, or priests can bring peace and comfort to our minds. At the time nature's destructive process commences, this is the natural course of things, and we cannot deceive nature. What then is the remedy? There is only one way out of this abyss of despair, and it is to adopt and accustom ourselves during our lifetime to nature's process, to move side by side with nature, and master the process of withdrawal of spirit, current from the body while in the conscious state through the help of a saint. And this without any suffering or trouble whatsoever. This is not a possibility, but a remarkable fact. Our joy will know no bounds when we come into possession of a secret that has baffled man for so many centuries. We become supermen in possession of a key to peace and heaven, of which we had till then only read about in sacred scriptures. Arise therefore and awake before it is too late to put this sacred science into practice. If we closely observe the process of death in a dying man, we see the pupils of his eyes turn upwards a little, and afterwards they may return to normal, and then he becomes senseless. When they draw upwards too much, he dies. Life ebbs out via the root of the eyes and is disconnected from the ties of the physical body and the organs of sense. Knowledge of this process and the method by which to travel this very way during our lifetime is the solution to the problem of death. No exercises are necessary, no drugs to swallow, and no blind faith to cultivate. This mystery of life and death is solved easily through the help of a master saint who will give you experience of the process and put you on the high road to higher realms. Even when acting indirectly through an authorized agent, he still remains the responsible power. Distance is immaterial to him. What is there gained by this process? This cannot be described on paper. At initiation, the aspirant sees the real light within him grow to the radiance of several suns put together, whereas normally the eyes are covered by a thick veil of darkness. He now realizes that the tradition of the lighted candle found in churches and temples is to remind man of the divine light of heaven within. He understands that the unceasing internal sound he contacts within is the divine link called Word by Christ, Kalma and Nilaya Asmani by the Quran, Naad by the Vedas, Udgit by the Upanishads, Sarosha by the Zoroastrians, and Naam and Shabd by the saints and masters. He meets the master within, talks to him face to face, and is henceforth certain of his grace, guidance, and protection wherever he may go, even at the other end of the earth. With evident proofs before him, he is now confident of himself in the science. Only now he can be called a theist in the true sense of the word, and can smile at those who talk of religion as a fool's paradise, a phantom conjured up by the crafted priests. the opinion of the masses and eat its tree. He has found a sure ingress through the doorway of heaven in this life and is on the threshold of viewing both internally and externally the secrets of nature. He is verily knocking at the door of heaven and tapping inside. Words of opposition cannot shake his faith in the science as the master guides him forward. Death becomes a voluntary process. Past, present and future merges into one, and he grasps the incontestable truth, the pith of all intelligence in the palm of his hand. Liberated from the body, which now appears a husk, clothed in rags, he feels his soul, inseparable part of the eternal spirit, and presses onwards to his original source. The world appears a dream to him, but under instructions from his master, he returns to his mundane life, wise and fearless in the discharge of his duties. Just as in any other science, certain preliminary qualifications are too required before progress can be made. Married life, hard work, or a poor environment is no bar. It does not count in your favor that you may hold a high position or possess immense wealth. Neither does membership of a particular faith serve as a recommendation. Wherever he may be, man must strive for nobility of character, self-control, and purity of heart. Purity in thought, word, and deed is essential. Blessed are the pure at heart, for they shall see God. An ethical life is a stepping stone to spirituality. But spirituality is, however, not just ethical life. This we must always bear in mind. We can divide man's life into one, diet, and two, his dealings with others. With regards to diet, vegetarianism and teetotalism is essential. Thou shalt not kill. Live and let live should be our principle in life. Body is the temple of God, and a sacred place. We are not to neglect it or abuse it. We should take best possible care to maintain it. With regard to our dealings, we should sow the seed of kindness in order to reap its fruit. Love and humility is most necessary. Do to others as you would wish they should do unto you. Love, and all blessings shall be added unto you. Love thine enemies. All intoxicants are also to be avoided, as they make us morbid and lose consciousness. These are not empty sayings, but very wise advice. Each thought, each deed, and each word has to be accounted and compensated for in nature. Every cause has an effect, and every action brings about a reaction. Uproot the cause and the effect disappears. This has been done by the masters who have transcended these laws. Others are bound by the bonds of karma, the root cause of physical existence, and the clever device of nature to maintain this existence. The law of karma